By the time my husband's mistress stopped smiling, the company logo behind the conference room glass already belonged to me. She had walked into my divorce meeting holding his hand like she was attending a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Red dress, diamond bracelet, fresh blowout. A little beige purse tucked under her arm like she had packed confidence for the occasion. My husband, Adrian Vale, pulled out the chair beside him and said, "I thought it was better if Madison heard everything directly." Madison Blake smiled at me like I was the old furniture being removed before renovation. I looked at her, then I looked at Adrian, then I looked at the two divorce attorneys sitting between us. And I said, "That's perfect. She should understand what she's attached herself to." Adrian blinked once. Madison's smile moved, but it did not leave. Not yet, because some women walk into another woman's pain thinking it is a stage. They do not realize the floorboards have already been measured, inspected, and wired. Adrian thought that meeting was where he would take half of my dignity. He thought he would take the penthouse in Buckhead, the vacation house near Lake Lanier, the private accounts, the company car, the board seat, the salary, and the public version of the story. He thought he could bring his mistress into a divorce meeting to prove I had already been replaced. He had no idea Madison was not walking into a divorce. She was walking into a shareholder meeting, and she had worn red for the closing statement. The first thing Adrian did was kiss her hand. Not once, twice. He did it slowly, almost gently. While his attorney pretended to review paperwork and my attorney, Malcolm Hayes, placed both hands on the closed folder in front of him. Malcolm was a quiet man in his 60s with silver hair, dark skin, and eyes that had seen too many wealthy men mistake paperwork for decoration. He did not speak first, neither did I. In rooms like that, silence is not emptiness. Silence is a loaded drawer. Adrian leaned back in his chair and adjusted his navy suit jacket. He had chosen the suit I bought him for the Atlanta Business Journal dinner 3 years earlier. The one he wore the night Vale Meridian Group crossed $50 million in annual revenue. The one he wore when he stood on stage, touched his chest, and told a ballroom full of executives, "My wife believed in me when nobody else did." He left out the part where belief had a routing number. He left out the part where my mother's inheritance funded the first payroll. He left out the part where the original office lease was signed under Carter Holdings because Adrian's credit was too thin and his confidence too loud. Men like Adrian do not call it help once they have climbed on top of it. They call it foundation, then pretend the ground built itself. His attorney, Daniel Price, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Carter Vale," he said. I lifted one finger. "Carter," I said. He paused. "Excuse me." "Viola Carter. I dropped Vale 6 weeks ago." Adrian gave a dry little laugh. "Symbolic changes don't affect legal reality, Vis." I turned to him. Neither does arrogance. The room went still for half a second. Madison looked down at her purse like she had almost laughed and decided to save it for later. Daniel Price opened the folder in front of him. "We're here to discuss asset division, spousal maintenance, marital property, and Adrian's continued role as founder and chief executive officer of Vale Meridian Group." He said founder like it was a crown. He said chief executive like it was a shield. I watched Adrian's chin lift. That was always his favorite part of a room. The moment his title entered before the truth did, Madison touched his sleeve. It was small, possessive, a little performance for me. I had been married to Adrian for 11 years. I knew every version of him. The charming version, the wounded version, the visionary version. The version that spoke about legacy after borrowing money from people he planned to outgrow. I knew the man who cried in my kitchen because the bank rejected him. I knew the man who slept on the floor of our first apartment because he was too anxious to use the bed. I knew the man who asked my late mother, Evelyn Carter, if she thought he had what it took. My mother had looked at him for a long time before answering. "Ambition is not character," she said. "But character can carry ambition if the man knows how to stay grateful." Adrian smiled back then like gratitude was easy. I loved him then. That was the part people like Madison never understand. Betrayal hurts because there was once a version of the person worth trusting. Nobody grieves a mask. You grieve the face you thought was under it. When Adrian and I first moved to Atlanta, he had 3 suits. One used laptop. and a business plan printed at Staples because our home printer jammed on page 7. Vale Meridian Group was not a company yet. It was a fantasy with columns. Healthcare logistics, consulting. Software implementation. Operations strategy. Supply chain cost reduction, words that sounded expensive before they became real. He was brilliant in rooms. I will never deny that. Adrian could make nervous investors feel chosen. He could make clients believe chaos was just strategy waiting for a calendar invite. But brilliance is not the same as discipline. He dreamed in fireworks. I worked in receipts. I built the first client database. I edited the first proposals. I found the first office space. I sat with payroll when the account balance looked like a bad joke. I negotiated vendor terms when Adrian wanted to manifest favorable outcomes, and I wanted signatures. When my mother died, she left me 2 things: her pearl necklace and her warning. The necklace came in a velvet box. The warning came through Malcolm Hayes. He had been my mother's estate attorney for years. He knew Samuel Carter, my father, before my father passed. He knew how my parents built, protected, and documented everything. Carter money did not move without paper. That was my father's rule. My mother turned it into religion. 3 weeks after her funeral, Malcolm called me into his office in downtown Atlanta. I remember the rain that day because the sky looked bruised. I remember sitting across from him with my hands folded in my lap, still wearing black because grief had become my uniform. He slid a folder toward me. "Your mother loved you," he said. "She also worried about you." "My marriage?" I asked. He did not answer quickly. "Your heart," he said. "She worried your heart sometimes signed documents before your mind reviewed them." That sounded like my mother. Beautiful way to call me foolish. Inside the folder was the structure of Carter Holdings, LAC. My mother had arranged for a portion of my inheritance to be transferred into Carter Holdings, a private company controlled by me. That entity had invested in Vale Meridian Group during its earliest phase. Not as a gift, not as marital support, not as a friendly loan, as preferred equity with voting rights. Adrian knew money came in. He signed the documents. He heard Malcolm explain them, but Adrian heard what he wanted to hear. He heard, "Your wife believes in you." He did not hear, "Your wife controls the shares if you forget who built the ladder." That was Adrian's gift and Adrian's curse. He could hear applause inside a warning. For years, I said nothing. Not because I was hiding it, because I was building a marriage, not preparing a courtroom. I did not wake up every morning thinking, "One day my husband will betray me, so let me sharpen the knife." I packed his suitcase when he traveled. I sat in the front row when he spoke on panels. I corrected his speeches. I hosted dinners for investors who mispronounced my name, but remembered his. I smiled through jokes about being the woman behind the man. Because sometimes love makes you patient with disrespect, you would have slapped away from a stranger, and for a while. Adrian loved me well enough to make the patience feel worth it. He brought flowers after long trips. He kissed my forehead when deals closed. He called me his North Star in interviews. He used to say, none of this works without you." Then the company got bigger. The offices moved from rented rooms to 2 full floors of glass and steel. The client list changed. His watch changed. His smile changed. That was the first warning. Not Madison, not the perfume on his jacket. Not the hotel charge in Savannah when he said he was in Charlotte. The first warning was language. He stopped saying, "We built." He started saying, "I founded." He stopped asking, "What do you think?" He started saying, "You wouldn't understand this part." That is how some men begin the funeral of a marriage. Not with another woman, with grammar, I noticed. Of course I noticed. That was my weakness. I wanted to be mature, reasonable, calm. The kind of woman who does not jump to conclusions because she has seen too many people destroy good things with insecurity. So when he came home late, I believed the meetings. When he changed his phone password, I believed the cybersecurity excuse. When he started taking calls on the balcony, I believed the investor privacy story. Then came Madison Blake. At first, she was introduced as a marketing consultant, 29. Polished, confident in the way people are when they have not yet lost anything expensive. She had joined a brand repositioning project for Vale Meridian Group. Adrian said she was fresh energy. Fresh energy. That phrase sat in my ear like a gnat. Madison was everywhere within 3 months. Client dinners, strategy sessions, investor events, company retreats, photos where her hand rested too close to Adrian's arm, videos where she laughed too long at things he said, posts where she tagged the company and wrote things like, "Building with visionaries." I asked Adrian once gently if there was something I needed to know. He looked hurt. That was his best weapon, not anger. Injury. "Viola," he said, "I'm trying to build something generational and you're asking me about Instagram captions." I apologized. That sentence still embarrasses me. Not because I was wrong, because I apologized for hearing the smoke before the house admitted it was burning. For 2 weeks after that, Adrian became kind again. Small recovery. False comfort. He came home early, he cooked salmon badly and acted proud. He kissed my shoulder while I washed dishes. He told me I was the only person who knew the real him. I wanted to believe him so badly that I helped him lie to me. That is the part of betrayal. Nobody puts on motivational quotes. Sometimes the villain does not need to fool you. Sometimes they only need to borrow the hope you are already carrying. Then my cousin Brianna called. Brianna Carter had the kind of voice that could turn a whisper into a subpoena. "Viola," she said. "Where is Adrian tonight?" "In Nashville," I said. "Healthcare Systems Conference." "No, he's not." My hand tightened around the phone. She sent a photo. It was taken through the front window of a restaurant in Midtown Atlanta. Adrian sat in a corner booth with Madison. His hand was on the back of her neck. Not friendly, not professional, not ambiguous. Some photos do not need sound. I stared at it for so long the screen dimmed. Brianna stayed quiet. "Do you want me to come over?" I said, "Number Viola." I said no. I hung up, then I sat in the dark living room of the home Adrian and I bought after his first major exit bonus. The city lights blinked outside like nothing had happened. The couch still held the shape of both our lives. His shoes were by the door. His favorite coffee mug was in the sink. That is what makes betrayal cruel. It does not arrive in a ruined house. It arrives in a normal one and teaches every object a new language. I did not confront him that night. When he came home, he kissed my cheek and said the flight was delayed. There had been no flight. I smelled Madison's perfume on his shirt. Still, I smiled. Not because I was weak, because the truth had just started collecting itself. The next morning, I called Malcolm. He did not sound surprised. That hurt more than I expected. "How long have you suspected?" "Long enough to hope I was wrong," he said. Hope, there it was again. Hope is beautiful until it becomes unpaid labor. Malcolm told me not to move emotionally. "Move properly," he said. "Do not argue with a man who benefits from confusion. Preserve documents. Watch accounts. Do not threaten. Do not warn. Do not teach him how to hide better." So I watched quietly. Adrian kept lying, quietly. Madison kept posting. Loudly, she posted hotel lobbies with no location tag. I matched the marble floor to a hotel in Miami. She posted champagne glasses on a balcony. I matched the skyline to an executive suite paid for by Vale Meridian Group. She posted a Cartier bracelet with the caption, "When he knows your worth." I found the charge under client entertainment. Women like Madison think subtlety is protection, but soft launches still leave footprints. The deeper I looked, the clearer the pattern became. Madison's consulting invoices had inflated. Her company, Blake Creative Strategy, had billed Vale Meridian Group for services she never delivered. Brand audit, executive positioning, digital narrative design, stakeholder perception mapping. Fancy names for being flown around the country on my husband's company card. One invoice billed $12,000 for a reputation architecture session. On the same weekend, Adrian took her to Sea Island. Reputation architecture. That one almost made me laugh. The affair had its own vocabulary. Adrian was not just cheating. He was laundering disrespect through corporate expenses. I gathered everything. Emails, invoices, receipts, flight confirmations, hotel charges, board reports, screenshots, photos, calendar entries, expense approvals, Madison's own posts. Then came the second betrayal. Adrian filed for divorce first. That did not surprise me. What surprised me was the story he told. His petition suggested that I had become emotionally unstable, withdrawn, controlling, and hostile toward his professional growth. He claimed I had contributed little to the business. He claimed his company was separate property. He claimed I had enjoyed a luxury lifestyle funded entirely by his hard work. That line stayed with me. Funded entirely by his hard work. Some lies do not just insult your intelligence. They try to repossess your history. Adrian's attorney sent over a proposed settlement. He would keep Vale Meridian Group. He would keep his executive compensation. He would keep both company vehicles. He would buy out my limited marital interest over 7 years. I would keep jewelry, personal items, and a reduced monthly support payment for 18 months. 18 months, 11 years of marriage, 8 years of unpaid labor. Own company built on my inheritance. Reduced to 18 months and jewelry. I read the offer at my kitchen island while rain tapped against the windows. The house was too quiet. For the first time in weeks, I cried. Not loudly, not beautifully, just the kind of crying that sits in your chest like a locked door. I cried for the woman who believed him. I cried for my mother because she knew. I cried because somewhere in heaven Evelyn Carter was probably saying, "Baby, I tried to tell you without breaking your heart early." Then I wiped my face, opened my laptop, and created a folder called Vale Final. That night, I stopped asking, why did he do this to me? I started asking, what can I prove? That is the moment a betrayed woman becomes dangerous. Not when she gets angry, when she gets organized. The investigation took 6 weeks. Malcolm brought in a forensic accountant named Denise Rowe. Denise was small, neat, and terrifying with spreadsheets. She wore reading glasses on a chain and could find fraud in a birthday card. She traced the expenses, Madison's invoices, Adrian's reimbursements, company funds used for personal travel. The luxury apartment Madison leased in Sandy Springs, where one payment had been made from an account linked to a Vale Meridian Executive Discretionary Fund. Adrian had approved it as temporary consultant housing. Temporary consultant housing. There are men who cheat so boldly they start naming evidence like it works for them. Denise found more. A company Amex used for Madison's wardrobe before a conference. A payment to a jeweler listed as client appreciation gift. A wire to Blake Creative Strategy routed through a vendor account that had not been reviewed by finance because Adrian had personally marked it CEO approved. Each receipt was a brick. Each invoice was a nail. Each timestamp tightened the room we had not yet entered. Then Brianna helped more than she knew. She remembered seeing Madison at a charity gala months before the affair became obvious. Madison had introduced herself as Adrian's partner. Not consultant, partner. Brianna had saved the program from the event because her friend's nonprofit was listed in it. In the back of the program, there was a sponsor page. Vale Meridian Group. Under representatives attending, Adrian Vale and Madison Blake, not Viola Carter. Not Mrs. Vale, Madison Blake. The public replacement had started before the private ending. That was the emotional low point. Not the sex, not the spending, not even the divorce filing. It was realizing Adrian had removed me from the story while I was still helping him edit the chapters. Still, I did not call him. I did not send Madison a message. I did not post quotes. I did not let pain chase attention. People think silence is doing nothing because silence does not perform. But silence is where I kept the evidence warm. 2 days before the divorce meeting, Adrian overplayed his hand. He called me from a number I did not recognize. I answered because Malcolm told me not to block unknown numbers during litigation. His voice was smooth. "Vefe," he said, "we don't have to make this ugly." I looked at my laptop screen. A spreadsheet of unauthorized expenses glowed in front of me. "It became ugly when you lied," I said. He sighed like I had disappointed him. "I know you're hurt, but you need to be realistic. Vale Meridian is mine. I built it. You were my wife, and I appreciate your support, but support isn't ownership. Support. There it was, the word men use when they want labor without debt. I said nothing. He continued. "Madison will be at the meeting Friday. That made me look up. Why? because she's part of my life now. And frankly, the sooner everyone accepts that, the better. Everyone. He meant me. He wanted me to sit across from my replacement and shrink. He wanted Madison to watch me negotiate my exit from a life she had already decorated in her imagination. He wanted the room to teach me my new size. Is your attorney aware of that? I asked. He will be. Good, I said. Adrian paused. Good, yes, I said. Bring her. He laughed softly. That laugh told me everything. He thought I had broken. He did not know I had opened the gate. On Friday morning, I wore black, not funeral black. Tailored dress, low heels, my mother's pearl necklace. Evelyn Carter's pearls had weight. Not heavy, present. They sat at my collarbone like a hand reminding me to sit straight. Malcolm met me outside the conference room in Midtown Atlanta. The law office occupied the 23rd floor, with glass walls and a view of the city that made every conversation feel expensive. You ready? He asked. No, I said. He nodded. Good. Ready is overrated. Prepared is better. That was Malcolm, a whole sermon in one sentence. Inside the conference room, Adrian was already seated. Madison sat beside him, of course. She looked too comfortable. That was the first thing I noticed. Comfort is dangerous when it arrives before information. She had placed her phone face up on the table. Screen dark, nails perfect, legs crossed. She looked at me with sympathy so polished it almost reflected light. Viola, she said softly. I sat down across from her. Madison. Adrian's eyes moved over my dress, my face, my necklace. For a second, I saw recognition, not love memory. Then he buried it under arrogance. Daniel Price began with the settlement framework. He spoke for nearly 12 minutes. Spousal support, asset division, marital residence, lifestyle maintenance, confidentiality, non-disparagement, separation of business interests. Adrian watched me the whole time. He wanted to see me flinch when Daniel described Vale Meridian Group as Mr. Vale's independently operated and primarily self-created business entity. I did not flinch. Madison did something worse. She spoke. I know this is difficult, she said, placing one manicured hand over Adrian's. But Adrian has worked so hard for that company. It wouldn't be fair to punish him for moving on. Some phrases deserve a chair thrown at them. I gave her a calm look. Madison, I said, do you believe you understand this company? She straightened, pleased to be invited into relevance. I understand enough. Adrian's mouth tightened, but he did not stop her. Mistresses are easiest to trap when they think the wife is the emotional one, Madison continued. I've seen what he carries, the pressure, the employees depending on him, the clients, the brand. He built that from nothing. There it was, the sentence. He built that from nothing. I looked at Malcolm. He opened the folder. The sound was small. The room changed anyway. Malcolm slid the first document across the table to Daniel Price. Daniel glanced at it. Then his eyes stopped moving. Adrian noticed. What is that? He asked. Daniel did not answer immediately. That was the first crack, Malcolm said. Carter Holdings, LLC operating agreement, executed 8 years ago, along with the investment and shareholder rights agreement for Vale Meridian Group. Adrian sat forward. What? Malcolm turned another page. Carter Holdings provided initial capitalization, bridge financing, and 2 subsequent capital injections into Vale Meridian Group. In exchange, Carter Holdings received preferred equity, protective provisions, and voting rights. Madison's brows pulled together. Adrian looked at me. What is this? I held his gaze. Paperwork. The word landed harder because it had once been his favorite thing to ignore. Daniel Price was reading quickly now. Too quickly. The kind of reading attorneys do when bad news is multiplying. Malcolm slid another document forward. This is the current cap table. Carter Holdings owns 62% of voting shares. Madison's hand slipped off Adrian's just slightly. But I saw it. Adrian shook his head. No, that's not possible. It is, Malcolm said. I founded the company. You did, Malcolm replied. Founding is not the same as ownership. The room went quiet. There are moments in life when language finally puts its foot down. Adrian looked at me like I had hidden a weapon in the walls. You let me run that company for years. Yes, you let me think. I raised my eyebrows. Let you. His face flushed. Malcolm's voice stayed even. Mr. Vale, you signed these agreements. You were represented by counsel at the time. The documents were explained to you. I was building a company, Adrian snapped. I didn't have time to read every. He stopped. Too late. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Madison looked at Adrian now, not me. That was the second crack. Nothing scares a mistress like discovering the wife was not the fool in the room. Malcolm continued. Under the terms of the shareholder agreement, Carter Holdings has the authority to call for board review in the event of executive misconduct, misuse of company funds, breach of fiduciary duty, reputational harm, or unauthorized related party transactions. Adrian's jaw flexed. This is a divorce meeting. No, I said. Everyone looked at me. I placed my hand on the folder in front of me. This became more than a divorce when you used company funds to finance your affair. Madison's face changed, not guilt, calculation. What? She said. Malcolm slid the second folder across. Expense reports, invoices, hotel bills, flights, jewelry. The Sandy Springs apartment, Blake Creative Strategy payments. Denise Rose, summary. Daniel Price whispered, Adrian. Adrian did not look at him. He looked at the papers like they had betrayed him by existing. I turned one page and faced it toward Madison. This is your invoice from April 19th. $12,000 for reputation architecture. Her lips parted. That was a legitimate consulting service. Where was the service performed? She blinked. I answered for her. Sea Island, at the Cloister. In a suite booked under Adrian's name and reimbursed through Vale Meridian. Adrian said, That's enough. I looked at him. Number enough was when you brought her here to watch me be humiliated. The sentence sat in the room like a verdict. Madison's eyes sharpened. I didn't come here to be attacked. No, I said. You came here to be introduced as the future. I'm explaining the invoice attached to that future. Her face went red. Adrian leaned forward. Viola, you're angry. I understand that. But you need to be careful with accusations. I almost smiled. Careful. The word sounded funny from a man who had brought his mistress to a divorce meeting funded by the wife who owned his company. Malcolm removed the final envelope from the folder. This morning, he said, Carter Holdings issued formal notice to the board of Vale Meridian Group. An emergency board meeting has been scheduled for Monday at 9 o'clock. Adrian's face hardened. You can't do that. She can, Daniel said quietly. Adrian turned on him. Daniel did not meet his eyes. That was the third crack. The room had started changing sides. Malcolm went on. Pending review, Carter Holdings is requesting temporary suspension of Mr. Vale's discretionary spending authority, preservation of all executive communications, forensic review of vendor payments made to Blake Creative Strategy, and board consideration of interim leadership. Madison whispered, Interim leadership. I looked at Adrian. He brought you to a divorce meeting, I said. He forgot he was also bringing a vendor tied to a misconduct review. Madison pushed back from the table slightly. I'm not a vendor. Malcolm glanced at the invoice. Your company accepted payment as one. That was the moment her confidence left the room before her body did. For the first time since she arrived, he looked afraid of losing her. Not me. Hair. That answered a question I did not know I still had. He was not afraid to break my heart. He was afraid to lose his audience. Daniel requested a private conference. Malcolm refused. Anything relevant to the divorce settlement and corporate misuse issue can remain on the record. Adrian laughed once, bitter and small. You planned this? I looked at him. You planned this. I documented it. There are sentences that do not need volume because the truth gives them weight. His chair scraped against the floor. After everything I built, I cut him off. After everything you borrowed. His mouth closed. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I did not perform pain for a man who had already spent it. You brought her here because you thought I needed to see what replaced me, I said. But replacement requires ownership. You don't replace the woman who owns the building. You ask her for a lease. Madison looked down. Daniel Price looked like he wanted the table to open. Malcolm's pen paused for half a second. Even he felt that Adrian's breathing changed. The anger was still there. But underneath it was something better. Fear. Not fear of me as a person. Fear of consequence. There is a difference. Men like Adrian can dismiss a woman. They cannot dismiss the cap table. Daniel asked for a recess. This time Malcolm agreed. Adrian and his attorney stepped into the hallway. Madison moved to follow them. But Daniel stopped her. I need to speak with my client privately, he said. My client, not you. Another little door closing. Madison stayed in the room with me and Malcolm. For 30 seconds, she said nothing. Then she turned to me. You knew? I looked at her. Yes. For how long? Long enough. Her eyes flicked toward the folders. And you just let me sit here. I leaned back. You walked in holding my husband's hand. Don't confuse consequences with traps. She swallowed. The diamond bracelet on her wrist caught the conference room light. I wondered if she knew company money had paid for it. I wondered if she would return it. I wondered if she had ever loved him or only loved the version of herself reflected in his title. Maybe both. People like to make mistresses simple. Evil, stupid, hungry. Madison was not simple. She was ambitious, careless, cruel when she felt safe, soft when danger found her. In another life, I might have pitied her. But pity requires distance. And she was still wearing my humiliation like perfume. She said, quieter. He told me you didn't care about the company. I nodded slowly. He told you what made it easier to take what was not yours. Her face tightened. I didn't take your husband. No, I said. He gave himself away. That part is on him. For a second, something like shame moved across her face. Then the door opened. Adrian came back in alone. Daniel followed, pale and careful. The arrogance was gone from Adrian's walk. Not completely. Men like him do not lose arrogance in one scene. But it had been injured. My client is willing to pause today's proceedings pending review of the corporate claims. Malcolm nodded. That is wise. Adrian stared at me. You're really going to do this? I tilted my head. Do what? Destroy me. There it was. The final costume. Victimhood. A man can bring his mistress to your divorce meeting, lie in court filings, spend company money on betrayal, erase your labor, and still call consequence destruction. I folded my hands. Adrian, I did not destroy you. I gave you 11 years to remember who helped you build. You chose to forget in writing. He looked away first. That was the first honest thing he had done all morning. Monday's board meeting was held on the 41st floor of Vale Meridian Group headquarters. The same building Adrian once walked through like oxygen required his permission. I had not been there in months. Not since Madison's name started appearing on calendars where mine had disappeared. The receptionist looked startled when I walked in with Malcolm and Denise Rowe. Mrs. Vale, she said. Carter, I corrected gently. Her cheeks flushed. Yes, ma'am. Carter. Small correction. Big life. The boardroom had a long walnut table, a wall of windows, and a framed photo of Adrian ringing a ceremonial bell after Vale Meridian's largest acquisition. I remembered that day. I had stood just outside the photo frame because Adrian's PR team said the image needed to focus on founder energy. Another phrase that aged badly. The board members arrived one by one. Claire Whitman, Chair of Governance. Robert Ellis, Investor Representative. Monica Patel, Finance Committee. James Holloway, Independent Director. 2 others joined by secure video. Adrian arrived last. No Madison. That told me she had learned something. The meeting began at 10,000. Malcolm presented the ownership structure first. Not dramatically, professionally. That made it worse for Adrian. Drama gives guilty people something to call emotional. Documentation gives them nowhere to stand. Then Denise presented the expense findings. Hotel stays, invoices, vendor payments, discretionary spending, potential breach of fiduciary duty, potential tax exposure, potential fraud review. She said potential the way surgeons say bleeding, calmly, because the danger is already obvious. Adrian tried to explain. He said the expenses were part of brand development. Denise asked him to define consultant housing. He said Madison needed proximity to leadership. Monica Patel asked why the lease was in a luxury building 28 minutes from headquarters. Adrian said it was temporary. Denise showed the 12-month agreement. Robert Ellis asked why Blake Creative Strategy billed for services on dates when Madison was traveling with Adrian. Adrian said strategy work could be informal. Claire Whitman asked whether any other consultants received Cartier bracelets as client appreciation gifts. The room went silent. Adrian looked at me then, not angry, cornered. That was when I realized the revenge was not the collapse. The revenge was the audit. The slow, clean removal of every lie he had hidden inside charm. At Ciritave, the board voted. Adrian Vale was placed on administrative leave pending full investigation. His corporate cards were frozen. His discretionary authority was suspended. All payments to Blake Creative Strategy were halted. A forensic review was authorized. Interim CEO responsibilities were assigned to Monica Patel. Carter Holdings reserved all rights. The vote passed 5-1. Adrian was the one. Of course he was. When the meeting ended, no one touched him. That is how power leaves some men. Not with shouting, with people suddenly remembering other exits. He followed me into the hallway. Viola. I stopped. The city stretched behind the glass, bright and indifferent. He looked older than he had on Friday. Not because 3 days had passed, because consequence ages people faster than time. I loved you, he said. That was the terrible part. I think he had loved me in the way selfish people love what helps them become bigger. I think he loved my loyalty, my patience, my silence, my mother's money, my ability to make him look grounded, my talent for turning his chaos into something banks would fund. He loved the shelter, he just mistook the shelter for furniture. I loved you too, I said. His eyes softened. For 1 second, I saw the man with the Staples business plan. The man who slept on the apartment floor. The man my mother warned me about while still hoping he might grow into himself. Then he said, "Then why are you doing this?" And just like that, the old Adrian returned, still asking love to excuse theft. I touched the pearls at my neck. Because loving you was my choice, I said. Protecting myself is my responsibility. He had no answer. Good. Some lessons arrive after the student loses permission to respond. The divorce settlement changed quickly after that. Very quickly. Adrian withdrew his claim that Vale Meridian Group was separate property. He agreed to vacate the Buckhead penthouse. The Lake Lanier house remained with me. The confidentiality clause was rewritten so it could not silence lawful disclosures related to corporate misconduct. Madison Blake retained her own counsel after receiving notice that Blake Creative Strategy payments were under review. Her Instagram disappeared for 9 days. When it came back, the Cartier bracelet was gone. So were the captions about visionaries. People always clean up the captions after the receipts arrive. 3 months later, Adrian resigned from Vale Meridian Group. The public statement said he was leaving to pursue new opportunities and focus on personal matters. That is corporate language for the door closed with witnesses. Monica Patel became permanent CEO. The company stabilized. The clients stayed. The employees stayed. The brand survived the man who thought he was the brand. I kept my shares, not because I wanted to punish him forever, because my mother did not build protection for me to donate it back to the person she protected me from. There was one final hearing. Adrian came alone. No Madison, no Navy suit. No performance. Just a gray jacket, tired eyes, and the kind of quiet that comes when applause stops calling. After the judge approved the divorce terms, Adrian stood beside me in the hallway. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Did your mother know?" "Know what?" "That I would do this." I looked down at the pearls, then back at him. "No," I said. "She knew I might love someone enough to forget myself. So she made sure the paperwork remembered me." His face changed. That one reached him. Maybe not enough to transform him, but enough to bruise the lie he had been living inside. I did not watch him until he disappeared. I had already spent enough years watching Adrian Vale leave rooms with things that belonged to me. That day, I walked out first. Brianna was waiting outside the courthouse with coffee and a face full of questions. "Well," she asked. "It's done," I said. She handed me the cup. "Are you okay?" I looked at the courthouse steps, the traffic, the gray Atlanta sky, the people moving through their own private emergencies. Was I okay? Number not fully. Freedom is still a wound before it becomes a view. But I was standing. I was named correctly. I was protected, and for the first time in years. Nothing in my life required me to pretend not to know what I knew. "I will be," I said. Brianna smiled. "That sounds like Carter blood." I laughed, softly, for real. That night, I went home to the penthouse Adrian once said was too big for one person. He was wrong. It was not too big. It was finally quiet enough. I took off my mother's pearls and placed them back in the velvet box. Then I opened the old Staples business plan I had kept in a storage drawer for years. Page 7 still had a printer streak through the financial projections. Adrian had written in the margin, "We'll prove them wrong." For a long time, I hated that sentence. Then I realized he did prove them wrong. The banks said he was not ready. They were right. The investors said he needed stronger backing. They were right. My mother said ambition was not character. She was right. But I proved something too. I proved that loyalty is not stupidity. I proved that silence is not surrender. I proved that a woman can love deeply and still document clearly. I proved that the person sitting quietly across the table may not be powerless. She may just be waiting for the right folder. Adrian brought his mistress to our divorce meeting because he wanted her to watch me lose. Instead, she watched him learn the difference between being a founder and being an owner. She came to see me replaced. She left understanding that some seats are not taken by smiling harder. Some seats have signatures. Some seats have voting rights. Some seats were paid for by mothers who saw the storm before their daughters admitted it was raining. And mine had my name on it the whole time. They thought I was losing a husband. They forgot I had already found the receipts. They thought bringing her into the room would make me smaller. But that room did not shrink me. It measured him. And when the paperwork finished speaking, even his mistress understood the truth. He did not bring her to my divorce meeting. He brought her to the day I took my name back,